Hey everybody, it's Author MD New. Welcome back to my writing tips and tricks for authors. Today we are going to talk about subplots. What they are, why we need them, why they're very important to your book, and the best ways to use them in your stories. So, what is a subplot? Well, we're going to get into that. But first, I invite you to please like this video if you haven't already and subscribe to this channel. It really does make a difference and it means so much to me. It lets me know that there are people out there who are paying attention to these writing tips and tricks, that they're enjoying them, that they're finding them helpful. I'm doing this for you to help you in your writing career. So I do really appreciate all the support and all the likes and the comments. So please do feel free to leave a comment below and to like this video. It really does help. So as I said, we're going to talk about the 9 things you need to know about subplots. First, you need to know what a subplot is. Well, a subplot is a secondary strand of the plot that is a supporting side story for any story or for the main plot. Also, subplots may connect to main plots in either time and place or thematic significance. Subplots often involve supporting characters, those besides the protagonist and antagonist. And subplots may also intertwine with the main plot at some point in the story. Okay, so what does that mean? Basically, think of a subplot as a side quest. It's not important to the story as a whole. It can be done, the story can work just fine without it. But this subplot or these side quests add more flavor to the story. It lets you build out the world and build out the characters. So, next up, subplots are distinguished from the main plot by taking up less of the action, having fewer significant events occur, with less impact on the world of the work, and occurring to less important characters. Basically, this just summarizes what I said. A subplot for a book can be anything. It can be a romance. It can be a friendship that develops between the characters. It can be any number of things that you want it to be, but it happens outside of the story. So think about some really cool subplots. Star Wars is a great example. When we meet Han Solo and Chewbacca, they're needed for the story to get Luke and Obi-Wan to the planet that they need to go to. But what we find out is that Hans has a bounty on his head. That is a subplot. That's not important to the overall story, but it is part of his character. It is part of his character development. And it is a way for us to get to know him. And as it works, it does actually become a major thread throughout the next 3 movies, right? So it is something that is there. Another subplot is and this goes out through the entire series of this particular book, but the Harry Potter books, Ron and Hermione, their relationship or lack thereof, this subplot plays out through the whole series and is woven in and out of the series of books. It's just something that is a subplot for them. Also, they have the subplot of Harry with Ron's sister. And I can't think of her name right now, but that's just another subplot. Or, Katniss and the love triangle that she's in the Hunger Games, right? So they're not important to the story. They do end up making the story much more interesting, but they're not important to the overall story, right? And it's something that it's a way for us to get to know the characters better. So, now, how do you know if you have a subplot? Simply put, the story can exist without this part of the story. That's pretty clear, right? It kind of goes into what I said. You don't need a subplot. It just makes the story more interesting. And if the subplot is removed, then it doesn't really affect the story one way or another. So that's something to keep in mind. So next up, ways that a subplot helps your story. And this is why we use them, and this is why they work really well in stories. It allows you to explore relationships. It provides a sense of realism, especially if you're doing an urban fantasy book or a sci-fi story, right? It shows human dynamics. And what that means is you might have an alien race that looks nothing like a human, right? They might have 4 arms, 3 noses, whatever, and they just look completely alien to us. But by giving them a little subplot where you can see some human dynamics, something for us, the reader, to relate to, then you kind of make that character more human to us as a reader. So it is just a way to provide that sense of realism. And also, a subplot can help your book because it can connect to the main plot of the story. So it could involve the main character in a subplot. There's nothing wrong with that. It gives them an opportunity for growth. It gives them an opportunity to explore a relationship that maybe they wouldn't have explored otherwise. So kind of keep that in mind. However, what's really important here is to keep your subplots under control. A subplot doesn't need to be in every single chapter. And subplots should be kept to the side of the story. So what that means is when you're writing your story, each chapter should build on the previous chapter, affecting the plot, the main plot of the story. So if you have this little subplot, side story going on, you don't need to reference it in every single chapter. It doesn't need to be there. It can get in the way of the story. So just kind of keep that in mind and keep your subplots under control as you write them throughout your book. Next up is mix up the subplots, right? Don't have them all be the same. Have it thematically, you want to have them be different, right? So a good example of this, or an example of this, is if your chapter starts on a high note, right? Something wonderful just happened. Maybe have that chapter end on a low note. And that's where you can have your subplots, become very helpful. You can have these characters just accomplish something really great. But at the end of the chapter, you have this little bit of the subplot where they find out that something bad just happened. Again, it doesn't affect the overall story, but it gives you that ebb and flow to the story, so you kind of have some thematic elements, some stakes, and some rewards that go in here. And on the reverse, you can start the chapter on a low end with really bad news, a death or something like that, and have it end on the high where, because of that death at the end of the chapter, they receive something that helps them on their quest or helps them with the main plot. It's just a way to weave these interesting parts throughout your story. So pay attention to that. Watch how your chapters begin and how they end. It's a good way to use the subplots within your story. Next up is consider the theme of your novel. Now, why this is important is because you want the subplots to tie in with the message that you're trying to convey. If you're writing a romance story, right, the romance is the main plot. Will they, won't they? Do they stay together? Do they not stay together? Do they have a happily ever after? Do they have a happily for now ending? That's the main plot of the story. All these other little things that you throw in there, like their car breaking down or them having a fight with their family or whatever, it doesn't, those aren't the stakes, but you do want to make sure that it ties in with the theme of the story. You don't want to have a romance story, and this is going to be a bad example, right? But it's just one that popped in my head. You don't want to have a romance story where, the subplot is the character suddenly being abducted by an alien and then taken away. That's not part really of the romance. It's like, okay, why did you do this? And then have them like returned in the next chapter. Unless there's something bigger going on, really, you're not going to have an alien abduction in your romance story, in your romance novel. I mean, you might, and that might be part of the story. But it's like I said, it's really a kind of one of those bad examples where you just sit there and go, okay, this is something to just get you to think about. Does this really tie in with the story? Is it really relevant? If it isn't, then maybe take it out or find something else to do, no matter how cool the idea sounds, right? Next up, for your subplots, and this is my number 8 if you've been counting, is keep your subplot simple. What I mean by this is you don't need a bunch of subplots. You don't have to have 15, 16 subplots and all these threads weaving throughout one story. Talk about a diagram chart that you're going to need. You're going to need to have all these different things planned out so you can keep track of them. You don't need that. Maybe you only need 4 or 5 maximum for a story. Now, if you're building a series and you're having these subplots throughout an entire series, then sure, have a couple more subplots. I've done this in my books where I have a couple of subplots that are going through the entire series. So by the end of the series, everything will be wrapped up. And this ties into my final 9th thing that you want to know about subplots is end your subplots in the book or series. So if you're writing one book, make sure you tie up all those loose ends, all those little subplots that you have. There is nothing more annoying than getting to the end of the book and you know there's not anything else coming. And you still have a couple of hanging subplots out there going, whoa. What happened to this? Or what happened to that character? Or why wasn't this resolved? That can be so frustrating that you do not want to do that to your poor readers. Now, if you're going to do a series, there's nothing wrong with having a subplot lead into the next book or the next several books. But make darn sure that by the end of your series you tie up all your subplots. And this is kind of why we go back to the 8th thing about subplots, is to kind of keep them under control and don't have all these subplots that are out there, because readers will catch that, and if they're not all tied up in a nice neat little package, or at least tied up somehow, they are not going to be happy with you. So those are the 9 things that you need to know about subplots, why they're important, how to use them, and really this was just done to help you think about subplots for your book. It is a way for you as an author to create a more rich story that readers will love and then go back to because there's so much going on and they just like the way that you wrote the story. So keep that in mind. These have been 9 things that you need to know about subplots from my writing tips and tricks today. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you've made it this far, please give it a big thumbs up. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And feel free to share it. Send it to an author who might be having trouble with their story and help them along the way, right? Authors helping authors, this is what it's all about. Okay, everybody, you have a great day, and we will talk to you again real soon. Take care.